Hi, I'm Cressel Anderson. This is Makercise. In this episode, we'll be casting the column front using the lost foam method and assembling the shaper column. I got a lot of questions about what a shaper is and what it does. Basically, a shaper is a machine tool that uses a single point cutter to shave material off of the workpiece along a linear path. It holds the tool, basically it's attached to the ram. The ram is a reciprocating part that's mounted at the top of the column, and by that reciprocating motion it's able to shave off a little bit of material during each stroke. And the maximum length of the stroke is the shaper's capacity. For this particular shaper, the capacity will be about 5 inches. As far as what the shaper can do, this old Tony has a really great video where he makes some lathe tool holders and demonstrates the setup and operation of a shaper. You should check that out if you want to see more about what a shaper can do. The shaper is somewhat antiquated and therefore it gets extremely limited use in a commercial environment. Many of the operations that can be done by a shaper would be done by a mill. However, in a hobby environment, the versatility and cost savings afforded by the single point cutting tools make the shaper a nice addition.
This is Rick Sparber's Gingery Shaper. One of the nice things about this tool is that it can do a host of different operations. Everything from surfacing to keyways, dovetails, gear teeth, internal keyways, internal splines, and internal gear teeth. Some of those are operations that can't be done on a milling machine.
I'm going to try lost foam casting for the column front, so I need to make a hot wire cutter to cut the foam sheets. I just grabbed some scraps out of the bin. I'm going to use this melamine left over from the concrete top lathe cart, as well as some miscellaneous scraps and a handful of parts that I picked up at the hardware store. I pulled this transformer out of a lamp, so we'll see if that works well enough. There's a lot of good tutorials on hot knives, so I won't spend too much time on this. I did 3 different test castings. The first one was just the foam with no coating. The second one was the foam with a coating on the bottom of plaster of Paris. And the third one had plaster of Paris all over the bottom. Oh man, that cool or what? I think I have found my new process. And this thing turned out really great. Look at the detail on that blob of hot glue. And you can see the seams between the two different layers in this piece. But it was really cool to see it coming out of the sand because the plaster of Paris stuck. It was kind of baked on to the piece and it kind of just chipped away. So I cleaned them up a little bit with a wire brush, but I'm definitely going to be putting plaster of Paris all around. I'm really impressed with how much that improved. My first several attempts at lost foam casting were not very successful, but this has changed my mind. I want to give an extra special thanks to Makercise cadre patron David Lang. He recommended that I give lost foam casting another try, and I'm really glad he did because I like it a lot, and I think I'm going to be making extensive use of it during the Shaper project. Well,
Didn't make it to the other
I
side.
don't know if it's gonna work. Awfully a lot of work to. Oh, that's a shame. That is a shame. I ran out of metal. I have to make that thing again. Maybe. I guess there's always the possibility that it worked out. Looks like I just barely made it. Oh man, look at that thing. Wow. I have a new friend. Plaster of Paris. That's a little thin there. I don't know what that's all about. Oh, what's this? Not sure what that's all about. Oh, I didn't get it rammed in well enough. There's the extra metal I needed.
I used the disc sander to get the column front pretty much roughed in, and then I sanded it on the surface plate. That gets it pretty close, but there's nothing like scraping in the surface to match that reference. In all, it took me about 2.5 hours to scrape the column front. One thing that's interesting to me and might help you if you're looking for a way to kind of cheat those corners, if you put on the Prussian blue a little thick, it makes your scraping job look a little better. I received about 80 pounds of steel, all in metric dimensions, and then got started with cutting out the vertical ways. I started out drilling a 3mm hole, then I enlarged it to 5mm and tapped it with a M6 by 1mm screw. That's a 6mm diameter, 1mm thread pitch screw. I hadn't yet received my 90-degree countersink, so I used my old 72-degree countersink. I had an oil pump in that bunch of parts that I'm going to melt down, and it just happened to have these 90-degree machine screws, 6mm by 1, and that's pretty much what I need. I ordered ones with hex heads on them, so those hadn't come in at this point, so I just temporarily used those screws to help me get everything aligned. And again, I pretty much drill up to a 5mm diameter hole through both the ways and the cast part. I remove the cast part and tap the cast part. Then I enlarge the hole in the ways and countersink it. After that's done, I could use my fasteners to attach the vertical ways to the casting, and then I could batch out the remainder of the holes. And one more time for clarity. I used a 3mm drill bit initially, and then I go back with a 5mm drill bit to enlarge it. That's the size that I need for tapping the holes. I then separate the ways from the casting. And then I complete drilling because I don't have enough travel in the drill press quill, at least not to make it all the way through. After those holes are drilled, I start the taps in the casting. Then I enlarge the holes in the ways with a 6mm bit. And then I went ahead and finished tapping the hole, this time using the tap in my handheld drill. That made that a lot quicker. I used the fasteners that I got out of the oil pump, at least temporarily until I got all my parts in, including my 90-degree countersink. Went back and started the countersink at the right angle, but got a ton of chatter. So I tried just doing it by hand. I already had it on the slowest speed of my El Cheapo drill press, but yeah, that 3-flute countersink just chatters like crazy. So maybe I can slow down the speed on my drill press, or I don't know, just tap it by hand. Maybe put it in the brace that I've got hanging on the pegboard. I drill pilot holes into the column side castings, and all of these won't have fasteners installed, at least not initially. I also drilled a hole in the rear bottom for the rear lower spreader. That's a section of M10 by 1.5 millimeter threaded rod. And I use some nuts on either side to kind of fixture the rear of the column together while I clamped in the column front. I secured the column sides to the workbench temporarily while I was working on it.
If you'd like to get early access to project videos as well as regular updates on the status of this project, go to makercise.com/signup.
So please avert your eyes. The alignment of these screws is it's pretty bad. We'll see. We'll see how that works out in the long term, but it was enough to keep the column front in place, at least during this part of the project.
That's really something like that.
Yes, indeed. This is it's rather embarrassing. Sorry about this. Anyway, I tried kind of hammering some of the slop out of it, but ended up needing to use a round file to enlarge that top mounting hole on the right column side. Anyway, that seemed to kind of flatten it out enough that I could get the ram slideways installed in the channel up top. I used the table saw to enlarge the channel up top so the 3mm by 6mm gib would fit down in it. And I cut a segment of 6mm by 25mm cold rolled steel to form the upper spreader. It's installed in the rear of the column. I used the hole in the spreader to help align the tap. I used an M6 fastener here. After I had the first side fastener installed, then I switched over to the left side and used the hole that I had drilled on the drill press to help me get everything lined up. Next up will be the ram and fitting the ram slideways into the column.
If this is your first time to Makercise, check out the full Lathe project playlist. I also have a playlist for the Shaper project that I'll be adding videos to as I complete the project. I hope this project builds your confidence to exercise your inner maker. Thanks for watching.